Coming to you from the shadow of the big house, it's BITV, Business Intelligence TV, Tools Training brought to you by ITS with your host, Gene Mackey.
Hey, good morning, everybody. I'm Gene Mackey. I'm your BITV host this morning. BITV brought to you by ITS, Information and Technology Services, how-to web broadcasts on business intelligence tools, applications, and data environments. So, here's a little bit how it works. We've got a couple files in the file share pod so you can get the links. And right now, those of you who are here live, you've got the full screen option if you'd like to use it. And then you can get the recording. I will be loading that up later today in my link, and you can play it back and pause it and rewind and all that good stuff. If you're a person with a disability and you need an accommodation, you need a transcript or whatever, let us know. What's coming up in October is Jason Passanetti is going to do use and design of sparklines and other microcharts, and he promises to reveal why a squiggly line does not a sparkline make. And today we've got Jeff Jenkins with ITS, and he's going to give us an introduction to the dictionaries, and that's beginning to intermediate level. And I got a couple of links here. I am working on a page that's a little introduction to the data dictionaries, but I don't have it up there quite yet. But if you go to this link right here, data sets in the Data Warehouse, probably within the next week, I would guess, you can get to that. And then I gave you a couple links here about all the data-specific resources in my link, and also data-specific e-learning courses. So if you're just getting started, you might want to check those out. And I'm going to hand this over to Jeff right now, and I'm going to share the screen and hand the mic to him.
We all set? All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Jeff Jenkins. Yeah, better? Perfect. My name is Jeff Jenkins. I'm a member of the data administration team within the ITS organization, and we are responsible, our team is responsible for creating and maintaining the data dictionaries and the data models that are used in the data warehouse. Like Gene said, this presentation is targeted to the beginning or intermediate users in the data warehouse. And what we'll use the HR data set and data dictionary for our presentation today. But the things that we go through here will be applicable to all the data sets like student records or FIN or financial aid. So you should be able to use any information here for any of the data sets. So an outline of today's session is hopefully we'll answer the question of why do you care about the data dictionary. We'll show you how the data diagrams in the data dictionary correspond to the folder structure used in business objects. We'll also show you the different sections in the dictionary, which are the table descriptions and the data element dictionary. And we'll try to do a quick example in business objects to try to apply what you've learned. If you have questions throughout the presentation, just go ahead and enter them in, and Jean will yell them over to me. If I think it'll take us off course too much, we'll delay it towards the end of the presentation, and feel free to send us an email afterwards, and we can answer any questions we don't get to here as well. So what can a data dictionary help you do? So a data dictionary can help you add new information to your query or report when you don't know the name or the location of the data element that you're looking for, or you don't even really know what you're looking for at all. It can help you determine when the data is refreshed that you're using in your report, and basically give you an understanding of all the data that's in that data set, and how it's organized, how it relates to one another. And so it'll give you hopefully a deeper understanding of the data in your data set. So all of our data sets have the same basic format. They basically have three sections. The first section is a data diagram section, so it will visually represent all of the different tables or entities and all of the attributes. So, all of our attributes or all of our columns within there, and then understand the relationships between the tables. And we'll get into this a little bit more. Then another section that's in each one of them is a description of all the different tables in the data set, and a little bit more information about each table. And then the last thing that's in each one of our dictionaries is a section that details all of the different elements, attributes, columns, kind of interchangeable terms here, and a little bit, again, more information about that information. So let's I'm going to jump out of here, and I'm going to bring up our HR data set, data dictionary, I'm sorry. And I do have this zoomed in a little bit, so I may be shifting left to right and up and down to kind of be able to show you the whole page, but for the recording it should be a little bit better. So each one of our data sets, start off with a cover page, tell you which data set or data dictionary you're in, some copyright information, and then we come down here to a table of contents. And like I said, we start off with the diagrams, then the tables, and then the data element dictionary. So as we start going down, we come to our first section, which is our table diagrams. And this just gives you a little information, kind of describes what you're about to see and what we're going to talk about. So the first thing what I want to show you here is, again, we have many pages with lots of tables and lines and circles, and what does all this mean? So the first thing that I'm going to show you is, obviously we have lots of them, and lots of relationships in here. I'm going to click here, so we'll get back up to here. So the first thing I kind of want to show you is, and I'm going to shrink this down. And sorry for I'm sure it's jumping a little bit on your screen. And then I'm going to bring up what we have here is I have the Human Resources Business Objects universe. And what I want to show you is how all the data in our data dictionary corresponds to all the data that we have in our Human Resources Business Objects universe. So you'll see at the top of all of our pages here in the diagram, we kind of have a page header. So this is person data and HR status, and you'll see that we have person data here. As we start clicking through, this is continued, so there's some additional tables that we just couldn't fit onto that first page. Now we have job data. And then our next one, job data continued, job compensation. So what you'll see is these high-level folders here should correspond to the different pages that we have in our data dictionary. Then, if I can get back up to our first page, now what you should see here is we have personal data here, we have personal data here. If we scroll over here, we have leave PMODs, hire PMODs, honor PMODs, etc. So then, if we come back here, then within each one of these folders, so I'm now in the personal data, I see I have these blue cubes which represent the attributes or the columns. These little rulers or the orange things, these are things that are unique within business objects, and you will not see them in the data dictionary. So these are metrics that are created within the business objects universe. But what you'll see is we have an EMPL ID here, we have an EMPL ID here, name, last name, first name, etc. We do try to make these a little more English and a little more pretty than here. So there may be times where it may be a little cryptic here and we may expand out the word a little bit. But you'll notice that the same order that we have the columns here, we have the same order here. So if you're looking in here and you want to use the CVIS primary ID indicator code and you're trying to look through here of where it's at, well, you know it's towards the end because it's towards the end here. So I mean that's, you know, pretty basic, but it's just something I wanted to share with you really quickly. So let me jump back over here and make this a little larger. And now let's start talking about, so what you'll also see here on each page is at the bottom of each page we'll have a legend that describes what all these lines and arrows and circles and, you know, dash lines, what does this all mean? So let me come back up here. Sorry, keep on going. So I have a picture here that might be easier to look at as opposed to scrolling up and down each time. So each one of these we will have, in each one of the tables we'll identify the key fields using this primary key, PK. Primary key just is it's a term that we use, and those are the columns that uniquely identify the relation, or I'm sorry, uniquely identify the data within that table. Sorry. And then we have these different lines. So we have a one-to-one relationship, a one-to-many, a many-to-many, an optional or outer join, and then we'll have some things above the tables that will say this is a secured table or a check status, and the dotted lines equal a view. So let's go back over and see what that really means. So again, we have all these different tables. Now what these lines are trying to tell us is what the relationship is between the data in this table, personal data, and the data in this table, PMODs. So what we see here is we have our EMPL ID is our primary key, and then what this is saying, this line here is saying for every record in here, so for every person in personal data, I can have one or many, that's what the arrow means, or no records, that's what the circle means, records over here. So I'm Jeff. Jeff could have none over here. Jean could be here, and Jean could have 3 records here. So that's kind of what that means, or she could have 1. We also have a relationship where we have 1 record here, and if we follow these lines down, and it can be kind of difficult to find, we have a one-to-one relationship. So I'll have exactly 1 record here and 1 record here. And then finally we do have one where we have a many to many. So I can have many department IDs here and many appointing departments here. One thing to remember is you will not have any records here when you have the many over here that don't at least exist here in this driver table, so to speak. So it can be kind of confusing to know, you know, what are these relationships? How do I really link these tables? How are these tables really linked up? So what we did as a part of the Fin upgrade that just happened in August is we created a new document that will help people understand how these tables are really joined together. And you may or may not care about this. You may just let the business objects interface do all those joins for you. But if you're curious, we've included a link on all the different pages of the diagram section, so you could click it, and what it will do is it will open up this Excel document. So this is what it'll look like when you open it up, and we do have a macro buried in here, so you'll need to enable the macros. So what this Excel document gives us is we have every single one of our data sets listed in here. So we have our human resources one that we're doing, but all the different ones, and then all of the different pages, and then we can tell here are all the different tables that we're using and how you would join this table to this table. So let's talk about our example. So we have this little search box where you can either, start scrolling through, or you just type in and it'll start, auto-filling for you. And then we'll just say filter. This is where the table personal data is used across all of our different data sets. And so we can see it's used quite a bit of places. So again, let's skinny this down to just the HR data set that we're using. And we can skinny it down further because we only want to talk about that first page that we're on. So again, if we think about our example that we've been looking at here, this one's pretty easy, but there are other data sets where, there's multiple columns used in our primary key, and it can be kind of confusing to understand if I was writing the query natively, how I would join these together. So I could, yes, not in business objects. So if you're, a little adventurous, or you have an RDA or something, you could do that, which might be out of the scope of this audience. But you can see we're going to go EMPL ID to EMPL ID, and that's what you'll see here. You'll see to join the personal data table to the leave mods table, you would use EMPL ID. We can find one where it might be a little more complex, but this is a pretty easy data set, and so we may not find anywhere it's going to be, really complex. If I just take this off, there might be some in here where you have different ones. But yeah, for this one, it's pretty simple. So this is a pretty nice new thing that we do have, and you can use it to help you do analysis not only within the data set you're looking at, but to see across data sets as well. So let's go back to our legend. That's here. So we kind of went through these PKs and the lines and the arrows and the circles and what that means. Now we come to this secured table. And so what you'll see here, oops, I'm sorry, wrong thing. You'll see on some of these tables, we have this little thing right here that says secured table. What that means is this is data that's sensitive and that the average user would not have access to this data. You would need to get special permissions. So, a lot of the data that, you would consider secured would probably contain, detailed address information or social security number or some sensitive payroll information like that. If you do need access to it, obviously you can work with your team to get the necessary access, and then you would see it when you logged into Business Objects, but you may not, depending on your access. There's other thing here, and you'll see this check status. Well, what's that all about? So check status is, let's find one here. Here we go. Fund table, program table. The fund table and the program table are not native. They're not a part of the human resources data area. these are financial tables. But we do want to bring them into our data, our HR data set to, improve the richness of the data that we provide. So what we're talking about here with check status is, and I'll show you this later when we go down into the table section, is you may have the HR data set, let's say, is refreshed weekly. You may have tables in your data set that may be refreshed daily. So if you're running a report every day throughout the week and you're seeing your results change slightly, this may be an indication of what's going on, as you may be including information in your query that is causing it to change. So that may be why you're seeing those strange things. One of the other things that you might see in here as well is you're going to sometimes see tables that won't have any lines between them. So what that really represents is there's really no way for us to make a logical connection between the data in the project grant table and the fund table, for example. It's like trying to compare apples with asparagus. Yeah, they're both food, but vegetables and fruits, and they just don't mix. So that's really the only other thing. And then I'm not sure if there's any views in here, but if there were views, it would have a dotted line around, instead of a solid line like this representing a table, it would be a dotted line. So that is kind of all there is. Okay. That's all there is really around the diagrams. So let's, and again, if you're having questions, please just type them in, and then Gene will yell them over to me. So the next section that we have in each one is the table descriptions. So this is nice because what it'll give you is it will give you a list of all the different tables in the data set, what their physical table name is, and this is nice, it gives you the logical name. Because a lot of the times we have to get kind of cryptic with, taking vowels away and shortening things to make sure it's compliant with database. This can be kind of helpful. And then it will give you a description of what kind of information we do have in those tables. And this is where I was talking about the check status. This will be very helpful too, as you can see here. Let's see if I can get on one page. Additional pay, administrative PMAs, they're all located in HR. But this class CF table and fund department table, they're all in the GL data set, general ledger. So what you can do to kind of look at that is, off of our data sets in the data data warehouse, we do publish what are the refresh schedules for all of our different data sets. So if we come down here and we can find human resources, we can see, yeah, it's Sunday at 9 and 3, that's basically the window that we have to refresh it weekly. But you can see here that we do use payroll and fin, and we could come down here and see, oh, well, maybe payroll is on a different cycle, and same thing with the fin. So you might have this in other data sets as well, like student records or financial aid. So again, just keep that in mind. This is a way for you to be able to identify what's in there and what's not. So let's go back to here. So again, pretty standard stuff. Now our last section in each one of ours describes each of the elements. Element, attribute, column, pick your term. So again, alphabetical order, every single column that we have in that data set. Here's the column name. Again, the logical element name is very helpful for me. This isn't abbreviation. This is annual base benefit rate code. Right? So that's the logical name. It's a character 1. This is the date. This is the table it's located in. That table is located in this data set. And then this is nice as well. You have a nice English description with some example values. So even if you didn't really know what it is, you could kind of get a guess of what is in there without having to run a query and try to look to see what it is. Security code is probably better described here. The majority of our data is private confidential, which basically means you've taken the certification and say, I promise not to do and use this data inappropriately. The majority of our data in our data sets is marked R, private confidential. Those ones with the secure data, the social security numbers, the address, those are sensitive, and if you do need information to that, or you need to get access to that information, you just need to get that additional level. There are a few things that I do want to show you. Here, the data format for all these different columns in here, you'll have things like character, number, date, things like that. If it's a precision, it's 12 with 2 to the right, things like that. You might see some things that are a little strange. Let me just do a quick find here. This might go faster than me just scanning through, or maybe not. Okay. Oh, okay, so I only got about 3 minutes left. So what you'll see here too is sometimes the same column is spread across a table that is in 2 different tables in 2 different data sets. Same column, 2 different tables. So let's go back to Webby real quick. So let's do a quick, this is going to be really rudimentary of how you might want to use this. So I just have a quick and dirty little report where I pulled over the department ID and department description. So good information, but it's a lot of information. I wouldn't mind to group it by something. So let's go back over to our dictionary. And this is a standalone table. Where are you? Here you are. So, now you could start saying, well, here are all the different elements I could use to group it up. Department desker, we already have. Department group. That sounds promising. Do I want to group it by the campus or the VP area? Well, I don't know. Let's go down and find out what that's all about and what kind of information is in there. So I went a little too far. So department group. You can see, department group. A code used to group U of M departments for reporting purposes. So this would be like LS&A, med school, hospital, things like that. That's pretty good. Or we could go to the VP area, which would go up to like provost and VP of student affairs, things like that. That might be a little too high for what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Webby. I'm going to edit my query. Now again, I can find my standalone folders, department. There's my HE department table. And I'm going to, let's throw in HR, or department group. I'm going to refresh my report. And if you remember, when you refresh, it doesn't automatically come into your report. So I'm going to drag it over. Up. Hopefully. Did it work? Nope. Sorry about that. This thing's really picky. There we go. So now you can see, yay, we have this grouped up at a higher level. What I might do to make this a little more readable in Business Objects, I'll put a little break on there. Nice. So this will, again, give you a little bit more information for your report, give you a little bit more richness to your report. So again, I need to wrap it up here. You know, what we covered is basically the three sections that all data dictionaries contain. They contain the first section, it has all the diagrams. It visually represents all the data together and the relationships between the tables. We have a table section that describes all the different tables in there, where they live, which can help you determine when they're refreshed. And then a detail of all of the different data elements within there with example values and their formats and those kind of things. So again, if you do have any questions and you haven't asked it now and you just feel like you would like to ask a question later, don't hesitate to send Jean an email and she'll forward it to me, and I'm not sure if she'll include my information. Feel free to send me an email as well and I can try to help you out as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Jean.
Thank you, Jeff. Yeah, we started a little bit late today, so we went on a little longer, and that's okay. Let me go back to my PowerPoint here. Oh, I did do that. Okay. There we go.